It's safe to assume that 2020 has been a universally bad year. To state the metaphoric elephant in the room, the COVID-19 pandemic has dominated the year and amplified many problems that our world faces, such as poverty, income inequality, and poor political leadership. Some countries were even privileged to hold elections during the pandemic. Georgia, of course, was one such country. These two aspects came to characterize 2020 in Georgia. As a disclaimer, we would like to note that we are not sponsored by any private entity, organization, or political party, nor are we endorsing any private entity, organization, or political party. The conclusions made in this video came from our own interpretation and understanding of Georgia. Georgia's initial handling of COVID-19 had won it international praise. Until September 10th, Georgia had less than 50 new cases of COVID per day. After September 10th, the number of new COVID cases continued to increase, even as the country had gone through numerous lockdowns, including a declaration of a state of emergency. And by December 5th, Georgia reached a peak of 5,450 new cases within a 24-hour period. Georgia had gone from being a world leader in the fight against COVID to being one of the worst affected countries on a per capita basis. The second major aspect of 2020 was the October parliamentary elections, which were held using a new parliamentary model. This is more thoroughly discussed in our video explained Georgia's October 31st, 2020 elections. Many Georgians and foreign observers alike had high expectations for these elections, hoping that they would signal that the Georgian government is capable of holding free and fair elections without needing European and American observers present. Additionally, many were hoping that the opposition would fare well, helping to bring an end to Georgia's notoriously gridlocked political environment by making it more pluralistic. Both of these aspirations failed to come to fruition. International observers from the EU, NATO, and the USA, along with other Western organizations, considered the elections to be free and fair, but with a significant increase in flaws compared to previous elections. The opposition, taking note of the difference between independent polls and the official results, decided to boycott not only entering Parliament, but also the second round of parliamentary elections altogether. The decision to forfeit the elections means that the opposition created a self-fulfilling prophecy, whereby the single-party rule of the Georgian Dream Coalition can largely be attributed to the opposition's refusal to, oppose, or even participate in any meaningful political action aside from street protests. At the behest of the American Embassy, the Georgian Dream Coalition and opposition parties began negotiations which were mediated by the US and EU ambassadors to Georgia. The opposition, rather than focusing on meaningful dialogue over serious and legitimate concerns regarding electoral fraud, decided to instead partake in hyperbolic accusations against not only the ruling Georgian Dream Party, but also took the unprecedented move to attack their own closest allies, namely the American and EU ambassadors to Georgia. As a result, the chairman of the United National Movement, Grigol Vashadze, left the party out of disdain for its handling of the 2020 elections. The lackluster quality of elections in Georgia, the opposition's failure to actually partake in politics, and the opposition's decision to attack their sole allies is the result of years of poor political planning on behalf of Georgia's opposition. This has led to the establishment of a political carte blanche for the ruling coalition, which has been able to act freely due to the power vacuum left by the absence of a meaningful opposition force in Georgia. Perhaps the strangest turn of events in 2020 for Georgia occurred on December 11th, when Georgia's most prominent domestic election observation organization announced that their initial parallel vote tabulation, which is a form of a third-party verification of election results, was said to be incorrect due to a technical fault. The newly adjusted data puts the parallel vote tabulation in line within the margin of error with the official results. This means that the initial polls, which the opposition used to claim that the results were rigged, were, ironically, the inaccurate polls. This debacle then begs the question as to the quality and validity of not only Georgia's Central Election Commission, which is internationally accredited with holding the lowest quality elections in around a decade, but also the competence of Georgia's civil society sector, namely election monitoring organizations and government watchdogs. The Georgian government's plans for 2020 were ambitious in nature, aiming to turn the country into a miniature Silicon Valley of the Caucasus. Many of the infrastructural components of these plans have come to fruition, such as the expansion of Poti's deep seaport, the completion of Georgia's east-west highway, the opening of Kutaisi International University, and the Georgian government's increased education spending. However, much of the human-based components, namely increased quality of education, increased foreign investment in technology and logistics, and further development of rural Georgia have yet to materialize in any significant manner since the inception of the Georgia 2020 plan. Instead, 2020 has proven to be a year in which Georgia's inadequacies have come to the forefront, laid bare for all to witness. It is important to note that Georgia has made strides over the past few decades, ranging from vastly improved transit infrastructure, a growing agricultural, healthcare, and tourism sectors, and, yes, even improvements in governance. The pathway to becoming a stable, democratic country is not linear, and even countries which were considered to be bastions of democracy and stability can easily backslide into quasi-oligarchies. Nationalism, political gridlock, and ideological polarization are not unique to Georgian politics, and, unfortunately, have become the norm across many of the world's foremost democracies. It is important to note that, although political and economic problems remain in Georgia, the country now has a solid foundation to build on. When all is said and done, Georgia seems to be far better positioned now than it was a few decades ago. Of course, there's always room for improvements. For more information about Georgia, visit our website, www.visiting-georgia.com. Thanks for watching.